In this video, we're going to share with you 10 signs that your marriage is in trouble, and we'll give you some tips to address each sign. I'm Dr. Elias Moitinho.
And I'm Dr. Denise Moitinho. We are professors and authors, and in this channel we give you tips and life skills to help you grow in your life. Big fights or no fights at all. Your marriage is in trouble when you're constantly having big fights or when you do not have fights at all. How can that be? If you're fighting all the time, it might be because of resentment and unforgiveness. And perhaps the two of you have not been able to have a calm conversation in months. The other side of the coin is not fighting at all. Although this may sound weird to you, sometimes not fighting may indicate that you do not care about the relationship and you are not emotionally connected with your spouse. So the tip here is this: learn emotion regulation. In other words, learn how to maintain self-control, self-soothing, and use conflict management skills. If you're emotionally disconnected, the other tips in this video will help you.
Poor communication. This is one of the top reasons why couples go to marriage counseling. If your communication with your spouse is filled with sarcasm, criticism, negativity, screaming, or even the silent treatment, it will create distance between the two of you. Naturally, you will be in an unhappy marriage. So a tip here is learn communication skills. You can learn how to listen with empathy and also respond to your spouse with gentle words. Proverbs says, "The gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger."
Lack of forgiveness. Because we are not perfect, there is always the possibility that we will either offend or be offended by our spouse. So if you and your spouse do not forgive each other, there will be a wall of separation between the two of you. So the tip here is this: we understand that there are some offenses that are too difficult to forgive. So we need to ask God to help us to forgive in the same way that He has forgiven us.
Lack of sexual intimacy. This is living like roommates. And you know your marriage is in trouble when you seldom have physical intimacy with your spouse. And since emotional intimacy precedes physical intimacy, then there is a problem in the emotional connection with your spouse. So probably you two are feeling disconnected. Remember the previous signs? And also there may be physical or emotional reasons for lower levels of sexual activity in marriage. So a tip here is be intentional in creating an emotional connection with your spouse. And that connection can happen when you listen to your spouse with empathy, when you respond with gentle words, and when you take time to nurture each other emotionally by spending time and doing meaningful activities together.
Take each other for granted. This is very tricky because often we are unable to see that some of the things we do communicate this type of attitude. So, for example, in your heart, you may believe you are not taking your spouse for granted, but your spouse may feel taken for granted. So a tip here is this: say thank you to your spouse as often as you can to show appreciation for what he does. And ask yourself, how would I feel if I heard my spouse say these same words to me? Would I feel taken for granted? Or if my spouse acted toward me in the same way I act toward him, would I feel taken for granted?
Living separate lives. This is a sign that your marriage is in a crisis because you do not have shared vision and goals for the marriage. You may even have secrets. And in this situation, you may be focusing on individual goals. You live your life and your spouse is living his or her life. So there is a problem. A tip here is make time, sit down and have meaningful conversation together. You may need to go back to the things you did when you were dating or the things you did at the beginning of the marriage. Talk about your vision. Remember the things that you desired for the marriage. Talk about your goals for the marriage, and make an effort to come up with a shared vision that does not eliminate individual goals.
Drifting apart. This may happen unintentionally. You may be so focused on your job, your career, that you may neglect your spouse. And sometimes couples may focus so much on raising their children that their relationship is no longer a priority. And it happens slowly, and then you realize you're feeling disconnected emotionally. So a tip here for you is this: make your spouse, your marriage, a priority. Give your time, money, and energy to your marriage, and be intentional. Plan dates and fun activities together.
Pornography and infidelity. This is definitely a big red flag in a marriage, and it is a symptom of bigger personal, relational, and spiritual issues. Pornography and infidelity can damage you as a spouse in many ways. Probably if your spouse is engaging in pornography or viewing pornography or engaging in an extramarital affair, then probably you are feeling low, down, with low self-esteem, lack of confidence, and even lack of trust in your spouse and in other people. These behaviors are destructive to intimacy in marriage and creates a crisis. So a very important tip here is find professional help. Go to a marriage counselor that can help you and your spouse address these problems that are destroying your marriage.
Lack of awareness of multidimensional intimacy. People get married because they love each other and because they want to experience deep intimacy. However, they may not be aware that intimacy involves mental, physical, intellectual, and spiritual intimacy. So be aware of how each area creates a domino effect, whether positive or negative. So don't neglect these areas of your marriage. Get professional help from a counselor if necessary.
And if you liked this video, click the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, watch the videos you see here on the screen that will help you continue to work on your marriage.